Not the polished version you hear in the Galactic Council briefings. Not the diplomatic summary that gets sanitized by 11 translators before it reaches your ears. No. I want to tell you the version I lived through, personally, in a building that smelled like something between iron and ambition, on a planet called Earth, in a country they call the United States, in a state they call Texas, which, now that I think about it, should have been warning enough.
My name is Vreth. I am what my species, the Kethal, would call a mid-ranking diplomatic liaison officer.
Which is a fancy way of saying I was the one who got sent to places other diplomats considered inconvenient. I have negotiated trade routes through asteroid belts. I have sat across the table from species that communicated entirely through scent. I have once, regrettably, attended a 6-hour banquet hosted by the Gorlun, who expressed hospitality by throwing food at guests. None of that prepared me for Mara Voss. The year was 2189, and the Galactic Alliance had recently expanded its membership roles to include 7 new species, the Kethal among them. As part of the membership agreement, all new species were required to participate in what the Alliance called the Unified Physical Integration Program, a mandatory fitness and readiness assessment designed to ensure that every species contributing personnel to Alliance joint operations met a baseline standard of physical capability. The Alliance had partnered with humans to run these assessments. I remember reading that line in the agreement and thinking absolutely nothing of it. Humans, small bipeds, carbon-based, average lifespan, short. I had met exactly 3 humans before this assignment, and all 3 had been bureaucrats who wore uncomfortable shoes and drank enormous quantities of a bitter brown liquid they called coffee. As though it were medicine. They seemed fine, manageable. I nominated myself and 3 of my fellow Kethal for the program. There was Solek, my second, who was twice my width and had the personality of a boulder that had decided to become a bureaucrat. There was Quina, our species relations officer, who was small for a Kethal and made up for it by being extremely opinionated about everything. And there was Dak, our technical analyst, who spent most of his time reading data reports and occasionally forgetting that other people existed. We arrived at the facility on a Tuesday. The facility was called the Joint Alliance Readiness Center, but the humans who worked there called it something else entirely. Something unprintable in most diplomatic communication formats. It was a massive complex of low-gray buildings surrounded by flat open land and a sky so aggressively blue it felt like the planet was overcompensating for something. There were other alien species there as well, trainees from the Vornak Collective, a pair of tall, 4-armed beings called the Chevy, and a group of smooth-headed Peltharians who had already arrived 2 days before us and were sitting in a shaded area looking quietly miserable. That should have been the second warning. We were processed through the front of the building by a human named Petra Oren, who had short dark hair, a clipboard made of actual physical paper, and the kind of smile that said she was professionally friendly but had zero interest in being actually friendly. She told us which building we were assigned to, handed us printed information packets, and pointed down a long corridor. "Instructor Voss has your group," Petra said. "Section 7. Follow the red line on the floor." We followed the red line. Section 7 was a large, open room with a floor made of thick rubber and walls lined with equipment I did not immediately recognize. There were metal bars mounted at different heights. There were machines with cables and weights. There were long, flat benches. There were things hanging from the ceiling that I had no category for. The room smelled, as I mentioned, like iron and ambition, with a secondary note of something I would later identify as chalk. There was one other trainee already in the room who was human. A young male, broad across the shoulders, with light brown hair and an expression of someone who had slept badly and was making peace with it. His name, we would learn in a moment, was Finn Baxter. And then there was the instructor. She was standing with her back to us when we entered, writing something on a large whiteboard in letters so decisive they looked like they were being permanently carved into the surface. She was not especially tall, not by human standards, and certainly not by ours. The Keth Al averaged 2.5 meters. She was perhaps 1.7. She had dark red hair pulled back tightly. Forearms that even in a long-sleeved fitted shirt looked like they belonged to someone who had a personal disagreement with physics, and the posture of a structure that had decided it was load-bearing and would not be talked out of it. She turned around. "Right," she said. "You are all here." "Good." She looked at us, one by one, without blinking more than was strictly necessary. I noticed that her eyes were a pale gray-green color, the kind of color that bodies of water turn right before something bad happens in them. She had a name tag on her shirt. It read, Voss, M.
My name is Mara Voss. I am your primary instructor for the next 8 weeks.
During that time, I am going to assess your physical capability. Push that capability further than you currently believe it can go. And at the end of it, certify that you are either ready for Alliance joint operations or that you are not. She paused. I prefer the first outcome. I work toward the first outcome. But I do not manufacture it. Quina leaned toward me and whispered, "She is very compact." I whispered back, "Do not say that to her face." "Why?" "I do not know exactly," I said, "but I am confident the answer is no." Mara Voss moved to the center of the room. She had a tablet in one hand, and she set it down on one of the benches without looking at it, like she already knew what was on it, and had decided the information was secondary to whatever she was about to see in person. "Today is assessment day," she said. "No pressure, no judgment. I just need to know where you are starting from, so I know how to build the program." She gestured at the racks of weighted bars arranged along one wall. "We are going to begin with a strength lift. Barbells, standard form. You pick up the bar from the floor, stand up straight, put it down. That is a deadlift. The point today is not how much you lift. The point is to see your form, your effort, and your baseline." She looked at all of us. "Lift what you can." And then she stepped back, crossed her arms, and waited. Now, I want to be very precise about what happened next, because I have spent a significant amount of time thinking about it since. When Mara Voss said, "Lift what you can," the Keith Al brain heard that instruction through a filter of Keith Al cultural logic. In our culture, physical exertion is considered a private matter. You do not strain publicly. Showing maximum effort in front of others is considered immodest, even slightly embarrassing. It suggests you are being pushed past your carefully maintained equilibrium. When a Keth Al says, "Do what you can," it means do a comfortable, appropriate, socially measured amount. So, Solik stepped up to the bar, selected a modest weight, lifted it smoothly to standing, and set it back down. Controlled. Effortless. Dignified. Quina did the same. Dak nearly dropped his on the way up because he was still thinking about something on his datapad, but recovered and completed the lift. I stepped up and selected a weight that felt appropriately modest. I lifted it. It was extremely easy. I set it down. I stepped back. Done. Mara Voss wrote something on her tablet. Her face did not change. This, I would later understand, was a very bad sign. Then Finn Baxter stepped up. He had been watching all of this with the politely neutral expression of someone who was trying not to react to something. He rolled his shoulders once, cracked his knuckles with the casual violence unique to humans when they are warming up, and stepped up to the bar he had preloaded with considerably more weight than any of us had touched. He lifted it. I want to be precise here also. He did not just lift it. His body reorganized itself around the weight. His back went flat and wide. His legs drove into the floor like they were trying to push the planet away. His face went red. A vein appeared along his neck that had not previously been visible. The entire room seemed to briefly recalibrate around the sound of the effort he was making. He stood up straight. He held it for a breath. He set it down. He stepped back and exhaled like he had just survived something, which perhaps he had. There was a silence. "Good," said Mara Voss. She wrote something on her tablet. Still no expression. But I caught it. Just for a second. A tiny shift at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. Something adjacent to one. The way a person looks when they already know the answer to a question and are waiting to see how long it takes everyone else to figure it out. I did not know what that meant yet. I thought I did. I thought she was pleased that one of her human trainees had performed well. I thought it was the kind of instructor satisfaction that comes from seeing someone you trained execute properly. I was wrong. She turned to face all of us together. "We will do 3 more exercises today," she said. "After that, I will review the data, build your individual programs, and we will begin proper training on Thursday." She looked at her tablet. "I will say this now, at the start, because I prefer honesty over comfort. Every species in this room has the potential to complete this program. I do not say that to be kind. I say it because I have reviewed your species' biological profiles, and I know what is possible. What you showed me just now, from most of you, is not it." Quina stiffened beside me. Solek made a low sound that in Kethal means something like, "I find this questionable but will not say so directly." I said nothing, because something in the way she delivered that last sentence made me feel like saying anything would be a mistake. Not dangerous. Just, structurally, a mistake. Like talking during a moment that was already speaking for itself. She moved on to the next exercise. And it was only later, much later, back in the sleeping quarters the facility had assigned to us, with Solek sitting on the edge of his reinforced bunk, and Quina pacing small circles, and Doc reviewing the printed information packet with the intensity of someone who had found a discrepancy, that Quina said the thing we were all thinking. She said we were not lifting what we could, Quina said. She was watching us, and she knew. She said we were not showing what is possible, I corrected. Same thing, Quina said. Is it? I said. None of us had an answer for that. Dak looked up from the information packet. I have been reading the Alliance Physical Standards document, he said. The minimum acceptable deadlift weight for Alliance Joint Readiness Certification, he paused, is 3 times your body weight. We were all quiet for a moment. That is the minimum, Solek said. That is the minimum, Dak confirmed. I thought about the weight I had lifted today. I thought about how easy it had felt. I thought about how Mara Voss had looked at me when I stepped back from the bar, with that expression that was not quite anything identifiable, and I began to understand, in a slow and deeply uncomfortable way, that she had not been watching to see if we could do it. She had been watching to see if we knew that we could. And we had told her, with our careful, dignified, socially appropriate lifts, that we had absolutely no idea. I looked at the ceiling of my bunk room. Thursday, I said to no one in particular, is going to be interesting. Outside the window, the Texas sky had gone dark and full of stars. Somewhere in this facility, I was reasonably certain, Mara Voss was at a desk somewhere, looking at numbers on a screen, planning something. I had been in negotiations with species that breathed acid. I had attended a summit hosted inside a gas giant. I had once been accidentally launched into low orbit due to a misunderstood farewell gesture. For the first time in a very long career, I was slightly nervous about Thursday. Arrived the way consequences usually do. quietly, without announcement, with all the calm of something that has been waiting patiently for you to stop thinking you were ready for it. We walked into Section 7 at the time, printed on the schedule, 6 in the morning. I want you to understand something about 6 in the morning on Earth, in Texas, in a building that had not yet turned its heating on. It is cold. It is dark outside. The air tastes like the sky has not finished deciding what it wants to be yet. The Kethal, for reference, are comfortable in temperatures between 22 and 28 degrees Celsius. We function below that, but we do not enjoy it. We get stiff. Our joints make small sounds. Mara Voss was already there. She was not drinking coffee. She was not reviewing notes. She was not doing any of the things I had catalogued from my previous human encounters as standard human warm-up behaviors. She was standing in the center of the room with a bar across her upper back, feet shoulder-width apart. And she was doing something the humans call a squat. Down and up. Down and up. The bar had plates on both ends that I estimated, based on my new and reluctant familiarity with the weight rack labels, to be approximately 120 kilograms. She did not stop when we walked in. She did not acknowledge us for 12 full repetitions. Then she racked the bar, stepped back, rolled one shoulder, and turned around like nothing had happened. "You are on time," she said. "Good. That continues." Solek leaned close to me. "Did she just—" he began. "Yes," I said. "As a warm-up?" "Apparently." He made a sound that I believe was the Kethal equivalent of updating one's threat assessment. Mara picked up her tablet and walked along the length of us the way a builder walks along a structure they are about to make significantly more complicated. She stopped in front of each of us for exactly as long as it took her to read something, confirm something internally, and move on. She reached me and stopped. "Vreth," she said. It came out correctly, which surprised me. Most humans mispronounced the Kethal V-blend. She said it like she had practiced it, and then decided pronunciation was a matter of basic respect, not optional effort. "Yes, instructor," I said. "You are the senior member of your group." "I am." "Then I want you to understand something before we begin today, because I will tell you once, and I will not repeat it in a softer form later." She had a way of delivering sentences where each word had appropriate and equal weight, like she had decided in advance that she would not lean on any one of them for extra persuasion. They were all just facts, standing in a row. The program I have built for your group is not easy. It was not designed to be easy. It was designed to find the gap between what you believe you are capable of and what you are actually capable of, and then close that gap, by force, if necessary. A pause. Not physical force, but you will understand what I mean by Thursday afternoon. She moved to the center of the room. We begin. I will not account for every minute of that morning, because we would be here considerably longer than either of us has patience for. I will tell you the shape of it. It was not like anything I had trained for previously. In the Keith L. military conditioning program, exercise is systematic. You perform a set number of movements, you rest, you repeat, you record the result. Clean, measured, respectful of your body's feedback. If something hurts, that is information, and you act on it accordingly. Mara Voss treated your body's feedback like it was a witness in a courtroom she happened to be cross-examining. She listened to it carefully, questioned whether it was telling the whole truth, and then asked it to elaborate. She had us lift things we had not lifted on Tuesday. She corrected form with a precision that felt surgical. Not unkind, but absolutely specific. She would stop you mid-movement and say something like, "Your left hip is rotating early," or "You are bracing after the load, not before it." And somehow, when you adjusted for the exact thing she named, the weight moved differently. Better. like your body had been trying to tell you something all along, and she was the one who could translate it. Quina, who had opinions about everything and was not shy about sharing them, had gone almost entirely quiet by the second hour. This was how I knew it was working on her. Quina goes quiet when she encounters something she cannot categorize quickly. Dak dropped a bar. Not badly. No injury. But he dropped it, and for a moment he looked at Mara Voss with the expression of someone who expected to be told they had failed. Mara looked at the bar on the floor, then at Dak. "Pick it up," she said. "I lost control of it," Dak said. "Yes," she said. "I saw." "Pick it up." "I could have injured someone." "You did not." "Pick it up." "Should I not reassess the weight choice?" Mara blinked. "Once." "Dak," she said, "the weight is correct. Your grip failed because your hands are not yet where they need to be. That is what the next 8 weeks are for. Now, pick it up." Dak picked it up. He completed the set. She nodded once, not effusively, not as a celebration, the way you nod when something has happened that was always going to happen, and you just needed to wait for it. It was around the third hour that Finn Baxter, who had been training in the same session, failed a lift. He attempted a weight above his Tuesday numbers, got it to knee height, and could not lock it out. He lowered it, controlled, back to the floor, stood up, and blew air out through his lips. "Too soon for that number," he said, more to himself than anyone. Mara walked over to him. "Not too soon," she said. "Grip width. You went narrow today. Same hand position as Tuesday, and it moves." Finn looked at his hands, adjusted them, lifted again. It moved. "There," Mara said, and moved on. This was, I will be honest with you, not what I expected from a human trainer working with alien species she had met 4 days ago. I expected patience, born of tolerance. I expected a kind of professional cheerfulness that acknowledges difference without engaging with it. I did not expect her to have studied our species' biomechanics closely enough to know where to look for a cathal's weak position in a loaded hip hinge. But she did. The morning session ended. We ate. We rested. Most of us spent that rest in a state I would describe as constructive collapse, where the body is technically horizontal, but the brain is still processing what just happened to it. The afternoon session was when everything changed. We were back in Section 7. The Chevy trainees had joined our session, which meant the room was now considerably more crowded and considerably more four-armed than before. One of the senior Alliance coordinators, a human man named Galt, had also come to observe. He stood near the door with a notepad, which in my experience means someone is being evaluated based on what they produce, not just what they do. Mara Voss was loading a barbell. She was loading it considerably. I watched her add plates to the bar. With the focused efficiency of someone who has done this so many times, the math happens automatically. She did not consult a chart. She did not hesitate between plates. She added weight the way someone adds words to a sentence they have already composed completely in their head. When she stepped back from the bar, the number on the loaded bar was, by my estimation, close to 200 kilograms. The room had gone quiet. Even the Chevy, who communicated partially through sub-vocal hum and were never entirely silent, had stopped humming. Mara looked at the bar, then at us. "I am going to demonstrate the standard," she said, "that this program is building toward, not the finish line, the direction." She looked at Galt near the door. He had his notepad. He was watching. She turned back to us. "The Alliance readiness standard is not theoretical. It is based on real load scenarios in joint operations. You will be asked to move things, carry things, and hold things under pressure, alongside species that include humans. The bar here is not symbolic. It is practical." She stepped up to the loaded barbell. I watched her set her feet. I watched her reach down and take the bar in both hands with the kind of grip that communicates something beyond physical. There is a type of intention that a body carries before a significant effort. Athletes know it. Soldiers know it. It is the moment before the moment, where the decision has already been made, and the body is simply catching up to it. She breathed in. She lifted. 200 kilograms left the floor. I have seen things in my career, as I mentioned, that recalibrated my understanding of what was possible. This recalibrated it again, except this time the recalibration happened in real time while I was watching it, and there was nowhere to put the new information except directly into my understanding of humans. She stood fully upright, bar at the top of the lift, locked out at the hips. For a moment that was either 1 second or 4, I genuinely cannot tell you which, she simply held it. Her face was red. The vein in her neck was back. Every piece of her was engaged in the kind of full-system effort that most species reserve for life-threatening situations. Then she set it down. Controlled. No drama. The plates touched the rubber floor, and the sound rang through the room once, and then the room was very quiet again. She straightened up, rolled her shoulders back, reached for a chalk bag, and dusted her hands off. "That," she said, like she was concluding a sentence she had started 3 hours ago, "is a working number. Not a maximum. A working number." The silence in the room could have been bottled and sold as a product. Then Solek, and I will love him for this for the remainder of my career, said, in a voice that was mostly his regular voice, but with something underneath it that I recognized as genuine bewilderment, "What is your maximum?" Mara looked at him. "More," she said. That was it. That was the entire answer. One word, delivered without any visible interest in its own drama. Galt, near the door, wrote something on his notepad. I turned to Quinna, because I needed someone to confirm that I had heard correctly, and that this was real, and not some elaborate orientation exercise. Quinna was staring at the barbell. "Vreth," she said, very quietly. "Yes," I said. "On Tuesday," she said, when she told us to lift what we could. "Yes?" "And we lifted our polite amount." "We did." "And she watched us." "She did." "And she wrote things on her tablet." "She did." "She knew," Quinna said. "She already knew." Before I could respond, Mara Voss walked over to our group. She stopped in front of me specifically, which I took as a signal that the next thing was going to be relevant to my responsibilities as the senior member. She said, "I want to ask you something, Vreth, and I want an honest answer." I said, "Of course." She said, "On Tuesday, when I told your group to lift what you could, and you all selected weights that I could see, based on your biological profiles and movement quality, were well below your functional capacity. What were you thinking?" I considered how to answer. I considered the diplomatic version. Then I remembered she had said she preferred honesty over comfort, and I decided to take that seriously. "We were thinking," I said, "that we were being appropriate. In Kethial culture, maximum effort in a public setting is considered immodest. We lifted what seemed socially correct, not physically maximum." She considered this. She nodded once, not dismissively, genuinely processing it. "Understood," she said. "Different cultures, different logic. I respect that." She paused. "But here is the problem. In a joint operation, if you are carrying equipment and your species' cultural comfort level is one thing, and the operation requires another, nobody is going to stop the situation and ask how you feel about being seen trying hard." She looked at the barbell she had just set down. "So I need to know the real number, not the polite number." I looked at her. I looked at the bar she had lifted. I thought about all of it, the whole shape of the last 4 days, and something clicked into place, not comfortably, but firmly. "Instructor Voss," I said, "on Tuesday, when you said lift what you can." Did you mean what was comfortable for us? I gestured slightly toward my group. Or did you mean... I paused, because the next part was the part that changed everything. What you just showed us. She looked at me for a moment. Then, and this was the first time I saw it fully and clearly and unmistakably, she smiled. Not a professional smile. Not a performance of one. An actual, real, quietly satisfied smile. The kind that belongs to a person who has been waiting for someone to ask exactly the right question. Now you are asking, she said, the right question. She turned to the room. All of you, she said, and the room snapped to attention with the particular quality of people who have learned that her voice at a certain volume means something important is about to follow. Are going to go back to the bar. Your bar. The one appropriate to your profile. And you are going to lift what you can. Not what is polite, not what is appropriate by your home culture's standards. What you can. She looked at each group in turn. Keth Al, Chevy, the remaining Peltherians who had shuffled in during the afternoon, and Finn Baxter, who had been quiet through all of this, but whose eyes had the lit quality of someone who finds something deeply correct about what they are hearing. The limit we are working against in this room, Mara said, is not the bar. It is not the number on the plates. It is the story you have been telling yourself about what you are. That story is not accurate. I have read your files. I know what your species can do. She picked up her chalk bag again. A small gesture, unhurried. 8 weeks from now, you are going to know it too. She set the chalk bag down. Get to the bar. We got to the bar. What happened in the following 90 minutes, I will describe simply and without embellishment, because the truth of it does not require any. We lifted more than we had on Tuesday. Significantly more. Not because we had become stronger in 4 days, which is not how bodies work, but because we stopped performing restraint and started performing effort. The two feel entirely different. Restraint is managed. Effort is alive. Your body knows the difference the moment you stop pretending. Quinna, who was the smallest of us and had been the most protective of her composed exterior, lifted a weight that made the Chevy observer standing nearby glance over with what I recognized as involuntary respect. She set the bar down and stood up straight and did not say anything, but her expression was the expression of someone who has just discovered a room in their own house they did not know existed. Solek lifted more than I had estimated possible, and then looked at the bar afterward the way you look at a problem you have just solved and are already considering the next version of. Dak did not drop the bar. I lifted my number, and it was hard, and I did not look around to see if anyone was watching, because it turned out that when you stop managing how you appear, you have considerably more energy available for the actual thing you are doing. Mara Voss watched all of it. She corrected. She adjusted. She said yes once, and again twice, and do not hold your breath through the whole lift. Breath, your brain needs the oxygen once, which was specific and accurate and slightly humbling. At the end, she stood in front of us. Better, she said, just better. Not great, not impressive. Not the triumphant declaration of a training montage reaching its peak. Better. One quiet word that carried inside it the understanding that this was a direction, not a destination. Galt closed his notepad and left without saying anything, which in my experience means he had what he came for. Mara Voss looked at us with those gray-green eyes. Same time Thursday, she said. Get some sleep. Drink water. Eat enough. Your bodies are going to be processing tonight, whether you tell them to or not. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. She paused there for a moment, not looking back, just pausing the way a person pauses when they have one more thing to say and are deciding whether the moment deserves it. She decided it did. You were not weak on Tuesday, she said. You were just polite. There is a significant difference. She pushed the door open. I need the version of you that is not being polite. And she left. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Quina, predictably, was the first to speak. I do not know whether to be insulted or grateful, she said. Be both, Finn Baxter said, from across the room, without looking up from re-racking his bar. That is kind of how this works. Quina looked at him. He looked back. They had what I would describe as a moment of cross-species understanding, brief and uncomplicated, the kind that happens between two organisms who have just survived the same thing and respect each other for it, without needing to make a speech about it. I looked at the barbell in front of me, the weight I had just lifted, the number that was higher than Tuesday's number, and lower than where Mara Voss intended to take me, and somewhere between who I thought I was and who, apparently, I was going to be, whether I had made peace with it or not. Outside the windows, Texas was turning gold and long-shadowed with late afternoon, and 8 weeks stretched ahead of us, like a road that does not look the same at the end as it did at the beginning. I thought about what she had said. Not weak, just polite. There is a significant difference. I picked up my bag, and I thought, well, I suppose we are going to find out exactly what that difference looks like when it has 8 weeks and 1 Mara Voss applied to it. I was, for the first time since arriving on this planet, genuinely curious about the answer.